The 2020 Oscar nominations are finally in, and for once, we have a huge number of Asians being nominated in various categories, like Lee Isaac Chung and Chloe Zhao for Best Director, as well as their movies Minari and Nomadland. Most notably, we have not one, but two Asian men nominated for Best Actor. Now, I'm not going to be here and say that the bamboo ceiling has finally shattered, because it certainly hasn't. Proof of that is that horrible shooting that happened in Atlanta literally the day after these milestone nominations. It's been a really rough time for everyone, especially Asians in North America, and I'm also not here to belittle the importance of exposing these crimes that are happening against us. But I don't know about you, but I'm getting a lot of doom scrolling fatigue. So for this video, I just want to pause that for a second and talk about how far we've come and celebrate the nice little wins that we've got. Hi, I'm Stella, and welcome to Salicot Cinemas, where I talk about movies because I watch too many and have too many opinions about them. In this video, I'm going to be going through a very brief history of Sessue Hayakawa, the first Asian leading man in Hollywood, as a means of both celebrating the fact that Yuen and Riz Ahmed have been nominated for Best Actor, and also give a little context for how long overdue this is. Full disclaimer, even though I am an Asian woman, and I would love to write a companion video about Asian women up for Best Actress, I likely will not. Be Kind Rewind is one of my favorite video essayists, and she already has a video about the subject, and she more or less says everything that I was planning on writing for that video anyway. But don't worry, if you're new here, I talk about Asians in Hollywood very often, specifically about tropes that center around us. Don't be afraid to join the fam. And also, as per the last few videos that I've done, there are donation links down below. If you are low on cash, these organizations also provide ways that you can help without using your wallet. And you know, my birthday was the day before this video was released, so I will certainly consider it a birthday present if you send a fat check to help out other Asians. Okay, let's get started. Now, if you were to look at a university prof's favorite source, Wikipedia, they have a very neat page that succinctly lists off all the Asians that have been nominated in every category in the Oscars. I, like many other people, I'm sure, went to look up if Yuen and Riz were the first Asian men to ever be nominated in this category. It's been so long since the last time that it happened, it sure seems that way. However, no, it looks like there were a few that came before them. Listed here, Yul Brynner was the first Asian man to win Best Actor for his role as King Mongkut of Siam in the 1956 film adaptation of Rodgers and Hammerstein's King and I. Though there is this article by Christy Zurila in the Los Angeles Times that argues that while he has had a connection to Asia, Brynner has added a lot of confusion about his own lineage, such as claiming his grandmother was allegedly the daughter of a Mongolian prince. Rock Brynner wrote that at a certain point, his father adopted a policy of public disinformation about his heritage, adding to the confusion, which some of those false details even appearing in the Times obituary of the Oscar winner. Yul's father left his mother when the actor was 4 and moved the children to China a few years later, Rock Brynner wrote. So she was almost certainly not a gypsy who died in childbirth, as the 1985 obit states. And also in this Wikipedia chart, we have Topol from Israel nominated for his role in the 1971's Fiddler on the Roof. F. Murray Abraham won with his role in 1984's Amadeus, and Ben Kingsley, who won for his role as Gandhi in 1982, and nominated for 2003's House of Sand and Fog. Now, let's consider this section as a means of pandering to the actuallys of people that will inevitably be watching and or commenting on this video. Because even though they all have connections or lineages from Asia, there are probably a lot of people out there that will say that they are not Asian enough. I'm not even going to go into that. I'm just acknowledging that that's a thing that probably exists. However, I would like to point out that Riz and Stephen are very obviously the first two that are not white passing in the slightest. Being slightly racially ambiguous and or white adjacent is definitely a career plus. In the 2006 documentary, The Slanted Screen, Asian Men in Film and Television, Lydie Levitt, a casting director, explicitly lays it out that there are not that many roles that were specifically written for Asian men. Typically, if the script does not explicitly say what the race is, the role is likely going to go to a white person. And so if these actors are white passing enough, they still can get white people roles. In the case of Ben Kingsley, who was born as Krishna Banji, he changed his name in order to get more roles. In an interview with Radio Times, he says, "As soon as I changed my name, I got the jobs. I had one audition as Krishna Banji, and they said, 'Beautiful audition, but we don't quite know how to place you in our forthcoming season.' I changed my name, crossed the road, and they said, 'When can you start?' But the irony is, of course, I changed my clunky invented Asian name to a more pronounceable and acceptable universal name in order to play Mahatma Gandhi. There's your irony. The practice of adopting a more appealing name is not limited to people of color. White people do this as well. Like Katy Perry was Katherine Hudson, Elton John was Reginald Dwight, Nick Cage was Nick Coppola, and most famously, Marilyn Monroe was Norma Jean. However, the reasoning for this is some variation of sounding more interesting, or to disassociate from an already famous person with a similar name, or an already famous relative, not to sound more palatable to a white audience to get more jobs. Some cases, such as Merle Oberon, are much more extreme. Oberon, who was born in India in 1911, was white-passing enough that she was able to have a successful career in white roles, while taking great pains to hide her lineage. She took it far enough that she even told people that she was born in Australia instead, which is why it is important to note that these two obviously not white men have been able to pass enough hurdles, like getting enough roles to hone their craft in order to get nominated in the first place. While Steven Yeun's role as Jacob in Minari clearly warrants a Korean man, has played many roles that are not race-specific, such as Derek in Mayhem. Ruben in Sound of Metal was actually originally going to be played by Matthias Schoenaerts, but instead went to Riz Ahmed. Ahmed especially has made an entire career of being in colorblind roles, like Bodhi Rook in Rogue One, Carlton Drake in Venom, etc. And I am so happy that he's getting very successful because I have been thirsting for this man for almost a decade now. Which leads me to my next section. Though Asian men have been a punching bag in Hollywood for a long time and have been desexualized and emasculated, it surprisingly didn't start that way. There have been actually quite a number of Asian men in leading roles that were considered desirable by the masses. But the first was Sessue Hayakawa. Hayakawa was a very popular silent film actor that shot up into stardom very quickly into his career. This was in large part because a lot of white women were thirsty for him. He was dubbed as the matinee idol, whose career depended heavily on female fans. There were even some arguments that he was Hollywood's first major sex symbol. Hayakawa was born in Japan in 1886 as Kentaro Hayakawa. His father was the head of a fishermen's union and wanted his son to join the Japanese Imperial Navy. However, while he was a student, he swam deep into a lagoon and ruptured his eardrum, which caused him to fail the Navy physical. This caused a lot of embarrassment and shame on his father, and put a strain on the relationship. When Hayakawa was 18, he attempted the samurai's ritual suicide of seppuku in his parents' barn and stabbed himself in the abdomen 30 times. His dog's barking alerted his parents of what was happening, and his father came in to save him. After he recovered from his injuries, he moved to America. Why and when he got there is a little muddled. Some sources say that he moved to Chicago to study at the University of Chicago for political economics, and where he played on their football team. Then he discovered theaters in Little Tokyo in LA on his way back to Japan. However, there are apparently no records of him ever being in attendance of the University of Chicago. Others say that he was likely always intending to go to California and worked odd jobs until he found himself into acting. Whatever the story was, it was when he started acting in theater did he adopt the stage name Sessue Hayakawa. His first silent film was the 1914's The Typhoon, which was one of the stage performances that he acted in prior. The film was an instant hit and thrust him into the limelight. Many audiences, American and European, were very quickly taken by his talents and good looks. According to film critic DeWitt Bodine, the effect of Hayakawa on American women was even more electric than Rudolph Valentino's. It involved fiercer tones of masochism, as well as latent female urge to experience sex with a beautiful but savage man of another race. So don't go thinking that these women or the people that would analyze his career as surprisingly progressive just because they thought he was hot. They still heavily fetishized his race. The discourse around him was very cringy, and people theorized that finding him attractive was due to some latent rape fantasy and forbidden exotic schlong. Keep in mind, anti-miscegenation or anti-interracial relations laws were in place at this time, and Hollywood was on the brink of putting in the Hays Code, which was a strict rule book that filmmakers had to abide by in order to upkeep good morals. Unfortunately, due to racism being more on the rise from World War I and II, as well as the talkies, aka sound cinema, being more popular, Hayakawa was getting less and less roles. With silent films, his accent would obviously not be heard, but it was unavoidable when he would try his hand at speaking lines. Throughout his career, he was growing increasingly tired of continuously playing villainous roles and forbidden lovers. Rather than starring in the 1921's The Sheik as yet another forbidden lover, Hayakawa decided to start his own production company called Howers Pictures Corporation. This would be the first Asian-established Hollywood production company. All these films were incredibly popular. In 1922, Hayakawa left Hollywood to act in Broadway until he returned for 1931's Daughter of the Dragon, which would be one, if not the first, Asian couple to actually be played by Asians on screen. Because before that, well... Apparently, Daughter of Shanghai in 1937 is on record as the first self-represented Asian couple on screen, but that was 1937, and Daughter of the Dragon was from 1931. And in 1957, he was nominated for the Best Supporting Actor Oscar for his role in The Bridge on the River Kwai. Before I get too far, I should say that if you're new here and you're utterly shocked that I have not talked about Bruce Lee whatsoever, I did a full video essay dedicated to the impact of Bruce Lee and the character trope that was birthed from his success. So, you know, give her a watch after this one. I love him too. I'm not neglecting the daddy of the daddies. And now today, we certainly have come a long way from Long Duk Dongs or Paul Muni's pretending to be Chinese men. While Asian men for a long period of time were desexualized and emasculated, and were not even able to kiss people on screen like in Romeo Must Die, we have come to some resurgent of that thirst that people had for Hayakawa. We had Henry Golding shining through as the new sex symbol in Crazy Rich Asians, and now K-pop is having this huge surge of popularity, and this year Marvel is releasing its first Asian-led film. With that said, Ghost in Shell was still able to happen, even though we don't have overt yellowface. And even though there's this overwhelming demand for BTS members, our elders are still being attacked. And I, like many of my friends, having anxiety about getting yelled at with racial slurs is the least of our problems. Unsurprisingly, you can apparently think that we are attractive and appreciate our aesthetic, but God forbid you treat us like humans. Like I said, just because there are quite a large number of people of color nominated in this various categories, I certainly do not think that racism is over. But it is a nice foot forward. I'm sure that there are a lot of people groaning and rolling their eyes and convinced that these nominations are a result of a lackluster movie year of 2020. But to those people, I say, you clearly have not seen any of these movies. Riz Ahmed capturing so much inner monologue without needing to utter a word. Steven Yeun's performance embodying hopelessness and hopefulness. Knowing that Chadwick Boseman was giving this range of emotions while literally dying and in chemotherapy. For the record, even though film is basically my life, I don't actually think the Oscars, or any of the awards for that matter, have a lot of artistic merit. Be Kind Rewind, the channel that I mentioned earlier, has almost all of her videos dedicated to the Oscar drama that happens every single year since like the 1930s. She covers all the weird Academy politics and insane lengths that studios will campaign for a movie. So even though I will be more than mildly annoyed if one of my 3 favorite performers don't win, I won't exactly be surprised, nor will them losing change my opinion about their movies. And it's not like the narratives that they've portrayed will resonate with me less. Yet there's also the undeniable reality of there being an actual monetary value to winning an Oscar. Best Picture winners tend to get a lot more sales after, and the winners of Best Actor and Actress tend to get a 30% pay increase. But again, that is if you campaign properly and appease the Academy. Monique, who won Best Supporting Actress in 2009 for her role in Precious, is an example of someone who did not abide by what the Academy wanted, and didn't have a huge career blow-up after her win. But I do think that since Asians have been vilified on screen since the inception of Hollywood, and off-screen still today due to a fun concoction of xenophobia and racism, having more Asians not only be nominated but actually winning does help normalize this. Yes, it does show to little Asian babies that we can in fact grow up to be actors too, but some people who live in small towns with only one or none people of color may not see an Asian person in their town at all. Having more of our faces just reaffirms that we also belong here, and we're not just some random pity nomination. And also, having us in well-rounded roles and not cheap caricatures does humanize us as well. That's also on the writers. And we certainly need a lot more Asians behind the camera as well as in front if the disasters that were the Aladdin and Mulan remakes were anything to go by. As Be Kind Rewind points out in her video, she notes that Asian films getting nominated isn't unheard of in Hollywood. Last year, Parasite won Best Picture, but none of the actors were nominated, as if to say that the movies were good in spite of its acting. If you were to ask me though, I think it's because America is ready to appreciate us as an ensemble and love our aesthetic, but doesn't care enough to address us as individuals and celebrate our own personal wins. Anyway, this was a heavier video than usual. If you stayed till the end, I really appreciate it. And while you're here, I would really appreciate it if you went and watched my video that compares Sound of Metal to Soul. It's probably my favorite video that I've done so far, and it's a little underwatched if I do say so myself. Don't forget those donation links down in the description box below, and also check out this super cute corset that I had custom made for me. I'll link her down below. She's a small business owned by an Asian girl. And I hope you all stay safe out there. Bye!